All right, let's jump into this deep dive. We've got a heavy one today from Charleston, South Carolina,
Oh, yeah.
summer 2019. And, you've given me all this stuff, news articles, court documents, even a podcast episode.
hmm
And we're going to try and figure out what exactly happened here. A senseless act of violence, right?
Yeah, and the setting itself is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
Charleston's known for this great food scene.
Right.
And this all happened in a neighborhood that's sort of in transition.
Yeah.
You've got these like beautifully renovated homes right next to, kind of rundown old houses. A lot of activity, a lot of change happening.
Yeah, like a microcosm of the city itself, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of all this, we've got Tim Heyman Jr., a sous chef, a really popular guy,
Yeah.
Christina Cologne, who's a waitress, and they're moving in together, starting fresh and ready to co-parent their 5-year-old daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, their romantic relationship was sort of complicated, as you mentioned in your notes.
Yeah.
But they were really dedicated to co-parenting. They were putting their daughter first.
Which makes the story even more tragic
Yeah.
because it was August 8th, 2019, moving day,
Mm-hmm.
and it just turned into a total nightmare. I mean, just picture this. Tim's unloading the rental truck, and he has this random encounter with some guy on a bicycle,
Yeah.
and it just explodes into this fatal confrontation.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does something like that even happen?
I know. How do you go from
Yeah.
0 to 60 like that? And witnesses describe the original, standoff
Yeah.
as borderline cartoonish.
Okay.
So there's this verbal exchange, then it turns into a physical fight. Christina even tries to get in there and break it up.
Wow.
And to make matters worse,
Oh, no.
the shooter's friends show up.
Oh, geez.
So it's like, forget about it. It's just this whole other situation.
Almost like everything is escalating.
Right. And then as Tim and Christina are trying to go back inside their new house,
Yeah.
the shooter pulls out a gun,
Oh, my God.
fires, hits Tim, and their 5-year-old daughter is inside the entire time.
That's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it really makes you think about safety.
Of course.
This is broad daylight in a busy neighborhood.
Yeah. And of course, the news spreads like wildfire. There's cell phone footage taken by a neighbor, which is just crazy to think about. The incident sparks this huge community debate about gun violence.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, some of the news outlets even showed the shooting, and others
Um,
chose not to.
That's such a tough call.
I know, right?
As a journalist, like, what do you
Oh.
show? What do you not show? It's a real...
Yeah, and how has technology changed the way we experience all of these events?
Exactly.
Crazy. So the investigators, they had a lot to deal with. The scene was a mess. Nobody had a clear description of the shooter, and of course, he took off immediately. But they did get a break.
Okay.
And it came from surveillance footage.
Oh, good.
But not the usual stuff. We're talking a whole network of home security systems.
Interesting.
And the grocery store even had cameras that caught some of it.
It's crazy, right? I mean, home security systems are everywhere.
Oh.
And it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You've got privacy concern. But in a case like this, I mean,
Thank God it was key.
it really is a game changer. And get this, it was the shooter's clothes that blew the case wide open.
What do you mean?
He was wearing this Louis Vuitton hat, Fendi t-shirt,
Oh, wow.
these two-tone jeans with tears in them, and bright turquoise shoes.
Like at the billboard.
Right.
Right.
Come find me.
Yeah, it's ironic, right?
Totally.
Trying to look cool.
I know.
And it backfires.
And it's a reminder that even in our tech-driven world, it's the little things that matter. So Sergeant Elizabeth Wilson was the lead investigator.
Okay.
And she's savvy, uses social media to track down the suspect, Shannon Johnson, who already had a record.
Social media is becoming such a crucial part of law enforcement now.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a powerful tool to gather information and track people down, but it does kind of make you wonder about, how much information is too much, Yeah, I hear you on that. And here's a twist you won't believe. It was Johnson's own mother
Oh, no.
who helped the investigators confirm his identity.
How?
She sent him a Facebook message, and in the message, she included a court notice
Oh.
with his name and address.
Wow. So you never know
Right.
what seemingly innocent communication can trait.
Crazy. And okay, you ready for this? Hours after the shooting, Johnson posts a picture of himself on Facebook wearing that same outfit.
No way.
The Louis Vuitton hat, Fendi shirt, everything. He even messaged a girl
Oh, my God.
telling her to use it as her profile picture.
I mean, what was he thinking?
I don't even know, right?
That's where psychology comes in. I mean, was it arrogance?
Yeah.
Was it a complete lack of understanding of the seriousness of what had just happened? Or is there something else going on?
It's mind-boggling. So armed with this evidence, the police used one of his photos to find him at the Bayside Public Housing Complex.
Okay.
They recognized a wall in the background.
Wow. That's amazing how, like, a little detail like that can become a key piece of evidence.
Incredible, right?
You got to have a good eye for that kind of stuff.
But it wasn't an easy arrest. They found him, but it turned into this whole chase. They ended up using a K-9 unit to apprehend him.
That's scary. Those situations are always high risk.
Right.
It makes you think about the danger that law enforcement officers face every day.
Yeah, for sure. So they finally get him in for questioning, and he is animated and angry, is how they describe him.
Oh, boy.
He admits to being the guy in the videos.
Okay.
But there may have been a problem with how his Miranda rights were handled.
Oh.
So that could have thrown a wrench in things.
Yeah, those Miranda rights are super important, right?
Absolutely.
They're there to protect people's constitutional rights during questioning by the police.
Right.
Any little mistake in that process
could change everything.
Yeah, it can have a huge impact on a case.
And then, to add to it all, COVID-19 hits, causing these major delays in the trial.
The whole justice system got turned upside down.
I know, right?
I mean, courts were backed up.
Totally.
Cases were getting delayed left and right.
It was a tough time for everyone involved, especially Tim's family, who are waiting for justice. And in the middle of all this, a new prosecutor, Chad Simpson, takes over the case. And he has this monumental task, right? Connecting with this grieving family while dealing with this completely messed up court system.
Building that trust and empathy with a victim's family.
Yes.
It's so important, especially in such a high-profile case.
Absolutely. And finally, December 2022, the trial begins.
Okay.
But the defense throws a curveball. They argue self-defense or voluntary manslaughter, claiming that because of the fight, Johnson's actions were justified.
Okay.
And they're trying to convince the jury that the video footage could be interpreted in different ways.
It's a classic defense tactic, right?
Right.
Create reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Play on the fact that perception is subjective. Different people see the same thing and walk away with different ideas.
But the medical examiner's report was a big problem for their argument.
What did it say?
It showed that Tim was shot in the back.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
Right.
I mean, because if he was shot in the back, it means he was turning away from the shooter.
Exactly.
Not posing a threat.
Not at all.
And that totally contradicts their self-defense claim.
Exactly. So after a week-long trial, the jury finds Johnson guilty of murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He's sentenced to 50 years.
50 years? Wow.
Justice was served, but at a terrible cost.
There's no winners in a situation like this.
There really isn't. And it gets worse.
What do you mean?
While Johnson was waiting for his trial, Christina Colon was killed.
No, are you serious?
Yeah, in a road rage incident.
You're kidding?
I'm not.
Oh my God. So their daughter witnessed both of her parents' deaths.
Yes. It's just awful. I mean, can you imagine the impact of that kind of trauma?
I can't even. It just makes you think about the ripple effect of violence. It goes way beyond just the immediate victims.
And she's now living with her aunt, thankfully, you know, a loving and stable environment.
That's good to hear. I mean, resilience is a powerful thing.
It really is. We'll be back in a moment to continue this deep dive into this crazy story.
It's tough to think about, you know, the daughter.
Oh, absolutely.
We were talking about before the break.
Right.
What she went through. I mean, witnessing both her parents die.
I know.
Violent deaths. And in such a short amount of time.
It's unimaginable.
It's hard to even fathom that level of trauma.
And how do you even begin to heal from something like that?
Yeah, it makes you wonder what kind of support systems are in place for kids who go through something like this.
Right. And at least she's living with her aunt now.
Okay.
You know, in a loving,
that's good,
stable environment.
Yeah, it's a little glimmer of hope in this otherwise pretty dark story.
It is. And, you know, going back to the legal stuff for a second, you had mentioned that there were some concerns about how they handled Johnson's Miranda rights during that interview.
Well, you know, the Miranda warning is all about protecting a suspect's Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
Right.
So, like, they have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, that kind of thing.
Right.
And if the police don't follow the proper procedures when they're informing a suspect of their rights, any statements that they make during questioning could be inadmissible in court.
So even though he admitted to being the guy in the videos, the prosecution didn't use any of the interview footage.
Yeah, they chose not to, which is interesting.
It seems like a big gamble, you know, to give up a confession like that.
Well, you have to remember, the prosecution's main goal is to secure a conviction that's going to hold up on appeal.
Right.
So it's possible they just decided that using that interview footage was too risky. Because of that potential Miranda issue.
It could have given him grounds for an appel if he had been convicted.
And then they'd have to do the whole thing all over again.
It really is like a chess match.
It is a legal chess match.
They're planning their moves so carefully.
Absolutely. And sometimes the best move is just to avoid a potential risk altogether.
Right.
Even if it means giving up something that seems like it would be really valuable.
And then the defense's strategy at the trial, that was interesting too. They kept focusing on how the video evidence could be interpreted in different ways. They were suggesting that maybe it was self-defense, even voluntary manslaughter.
So voluntary manslaughter basically means that the killing wasn't premeditated.
Okay.
It happened in the heat of the moment, often driven by like really strong emotions.
Right.
And it's considered a lesser charge than murder,
right,
which involves premeditation and intent.
So they were trying to argue that he didn't go into that encounter intending to kill Tim.
Right. They're basically saying that the fight triggered a reaction that led to the shooting.
Right. Trying to play that heat of the moment card. But like you said, the medical examiner's report with the shot in the back.
Yeah, that really hurt their case.
Really did.
I mean, it kind of paints a different picture than what they were trying to present.
Yeah.
If he was shot in the back, it suggests that he was turning away from Johnson.
Right.
Not actively engaged in a fight at the moment the shot was fired.
It's amazing how these little details, like the direction of a bullet wound, a piece of clothing, even a Facebook message.
It's true.
It can have such a huge impact on the outcome of a case.
It's like those crime dramas where they zoom in on a tiny fiber or partial fingerprint.
Totally.
It's those seemingly insignificant details that often end up being the key to the whole thing.
It's crazy. And speaking of details that matter, we have to talk about what happened to Christina Colon.
Oh, right.
With the road rage incident.
And yeah, that was just...
while Johnson was awaiting trial.
It's just another layer of sadness on top of an already tragic story.
It's hard to even wrap your head around it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it just goes to show you that violence can happen anywhere, anytime.
It really can.
Triggered by the smallest thing.
And road rage in particular is becoming a huge problem.
Oh, it's terrifying.
It really is. It's a scary example of how quickly tempers can flare.
Yeah.
And how devastating the consequences can be.
So according to the reports, Christina was with her boyfriend.
Okay.
They had a little fender bender, which escalated into a chase.
Oh, no.
The other driver, totally enraged, fired shots into their car, hitting Christina, and her daughter was in the backseat.
Very serious.
Witnessing another horrific act of violence.
It's almost too much to bear.
I know, it's awful. It really makes you wonder what is going on in our society when something as minor as a fender bender can turn into a fatal shooting.
It's terrifying, especially with a child involved.
And then legally it gets really complicated too.
Oh, how so?
Well, both the shooter and her boyfriend were arrested and charged with various offenses related to her death.
So then it becomes a question of who is ultimately responsible in a situation like that.
It's a tangled mess.
It is. It's a good reminder that justice is not always black and white.
No, it's not.
There are a lot of gray areas.
So many.
Yeah.
Now, going back to Johnson's trial.
Yeah.
There was this really powerful moment I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Chad Simpson, the prosecutor.
Yeah.
He did something that really got to people.
What was that?
He stood in silence for the exact amount of time that elapsed.
Okay.
Between the end of the fight and when Johnson fired the shots.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful statement.
It was.
It really forces you to think about the fact that Johnson had time.
Yeah.
He had time to think, to walk away.
To make a different choice.
Exactly. It really drives home the point that this wasn't just some split-second heat-of-the-moment reaction.
No.
He had time to consider his actions.
Chillin'.
It makes you think about those lost seconds and how they could have changed everything.
It's a good reminder that our choices have consequences.
They do.
And sometimes they're irreversible.
And it challenges us to really think about how we react in moments of conflict. How we manage our own anger.
Right.
And how we can choose a different path.
A lesson we can all take away from this, even if we're never in a situation as extreme as this one.
Truly. This case is just a tragic but powerful illustration of how interconnected our choices are.
Yes.
And how much impact they have, not just on ourselves, but on everyone around us.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It begs the question, what can we do, both individually and as a society, to prevent these kinds of tragedies from happening in the future?
We're back for the last part of this deep dive, and wow, I mean, it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's more than just a crime, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
It's about, love and loss and the search for justice.
And the split-second decisions.
Right, exactly.
That can have these huge consequences.
It shows how violence can come out of nowhere, right?
Mm.
Just a tiny spark can turn into something really destructive.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that, these events, they're not isolated.
Right. There are always multiple factors at play.
It's like societal issues and individual choices and specific triggers all coming together.
Exactly. It's like a perfect storm.
And you mentioned this before, the combination of anger and easy access to guns, that played a role in both Tim and Christina's deaths.
It did. And that's a tough conversation to have.
It is.
But it's an important one.
No matter where you stand on gun control, I mean, you can't deny that easy access to firearms, mixed with uncontrolled anger, that's a recipe for disaster.
It is, and this case shows it.
So clearly, right.
Yeah.
They were both victims of these impulsive acts of violence.
Right.
And in both cases, guns were readily available.
Yeah, it makes you think, what if things were different?
Right. What if?
Yeah, how can we promote responsible gun ownership? How do we teach people to handle conflict better?
Anger management.
Yeah, anger management. Exactly.
These are big questions. I mean, where do you even begin?
They are big questions, but we have to start somewhere.
I agree. I think it starts with us, right?
I think so, too.
Like recognizing what our own triggers are, the things that set us off.
Right.
And developing those healthy coping mechanisms.
And learning how to de-escalate a situation.
Walk away when you need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think it's important to remember that not every conflict needs a winner.
That's a good point.
Sometimes the best solution is just finding that common ground.
Yeah, or just listening to each other.
Exactly.
Trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
Choose dialogue instead of aggression, right?
Yeah, empathy over judgment.
And as a society, I think we need to do more to teach conflict resolution skills.
Starting young.
Starting young.
In schools.
Absolutely. And provide better access to mental health resources so people can get the help they need.
Yeah, before things spiral out of control.
It's about creating this culture of respect and understanding.
Where everyone feels heard.
Yeah, it's a big task.
It is.
But I think it's crucial if we want to break this cycle of violence.
It is. And it's a long-term commitment, right?
It is.
It's going to take collaboration across communities and organizations and individuals.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
We have to believe that a safer world is possible.
We do. We have to. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay.
Think about your own experiences with conflict.
Huh?
Those moments where you felt that anger or frustration or disagreement.
Yeah.
How did you handle it?
Yeah.
What choices did you make? Could you have made different choices?
That's something we should all reflect on.
It is. It is. And this Charleston story, it reminds us that every choice we make matters.
They really do.
And the consequences, they reach further than we realize.
Absolutely. It's a call to action for all of us.
Yeah.
To be more mindful.
More compassionate.
More committed.
Yeah.
To a future where tragedies like this don't happen anymore.
Exactly. A world where violence isn't the answer.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.